Okay, so today's day 2. Day 1 you should have went through. We're talking about NLP, which once again is Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And I asked you to get some eyeballs drawn out here. And then I told you we're going to talk about visual, auditories, and kinesthetics. We're going to divide that out into 3 different days. So today is visuals. So when somebody breaks the plane, so when I'm talking the plane, if you're to draw a line straight across, if you break it up, that means you're in a visual state. So that's why the arrow would come up right here as a V. Now, you're going to have 2 sides. You have a visual state on this side, and you have a visual state on this side. One side is your recall side, and one side is your creative side. So depending on if I'm on this side or if I'm on this side as a visual, I'm either recalling or creating. Now, people are different. That doesn't mean that we all recall on, let's say, my right side, or I always create on my left-hand side. They are different sides for different people. So you need to figure out which side is your recall side and which side is your creative side. And or if you're doing this to somebody else or asking them questions, you need to figure that out for them. So let's talk about visuals for a second. If your characteristic is you're a dominant visual, that means that, for instance, if I were to ask you this question, I want you to add these numbers up. So go ahead and do this with me. If you were to add 10, 25, 16, 11, 4, 6, what's your total? Some of you are instantly going to go, boom, here's my total, because you've seen all those numbers as I told them, and you added them up as you went, okay? And you're going to be able to relay an answer. Some people are going to hear like 2 of those numbers and go, oh, whatever, not for me. And then there's going to be other people just trying to scramble going, oh my gosh, this is so confusing. So visuals, they also, when you're talking to them to ask them to create something, they actually either recall things that they'll actually start to see what they're designing, and then they start to bring their, the recall stuff like the things that they've already seen. They start to bring all that together as they speak to you. So their eyes are up in a plane and they're designing, they're telling you about all this stuff that they're trying to do. They also, they see in pictures, a lot of different pictures, and that's their dominance. So when you go to a visual, you really have to make sure that you're explaining things the right way because they're seeing things. So for instance, my wife is very visual, okay? So let's say that I decide I want to go on a cool date. I'm going to go out and have a good time with all my buddies. We're just going to have a lot of fun. We set this date up that we're going to go do all this stuff. We decide to go out. We have this great time. I come home, sitting here talking to my wife, for example, and she'll say, so what did you do last night? Well, hey, we went out. We had the best time ever. We ended up going to this really cool bar, and we did this and we did that, and I say all these fun things that we go do. Well, when I tell her that I went to a bar, instantly, what does she relate that picture to? That's important for me to know. Because if she ties that to, oh my gosh, there's all these girls out there, there's all these things happening, he's out of control type of thing, that's not going to be a good thing for me going out with the buddies, if that makes sense. So when you say those key words, you got to realize you're triggering things in visuals, in pictures that you may not understand. So you may need to be a lot clearer on your explanation when you're explaining stuff to a visual by saying, we went to this bar, but we sat at a table all by ourselves because we couldn't get into a restaurant downtown. We played pool, we did this, and really describe what I did there if that's a trigger word, which to any of our wives, obviously, we're hanging out in these fun places, they're going to want to know kind of what we're doing. So I hope that makes a little more sense. So be really careful when you're explaining stuff to a visual that you're very detailed where you want their mind and create the pictures for them if you're not understanding that. Now, from a marketing standpoint, so when I'm speaking or I'm doing a membership program, you've got these different characteristics that you have to make sure you're writing content for, because some people want the message to be very visual. Other people are going to want it to be, like we're going to talk about in our next segment, very auditory. They're going to want to hear information, and there's a lot more to an auditory than there is a visual. And then there's other people who are going to want to hear it in a kinesthetic form. So it's really important when you're speaking or when you're doing a presentation or when you're putting stuff online that you're taking all this into account. And I know it's a lot to think about, but naturally what we do is we always attract the people that are just like us. And you don't want to surround yourself with everybody that's like you, because if you do, you're not going to get anywhere. So, sometimes we always pick friends that are in our circle that we know we can get along with, or we get employees that are exactly like us because they're cool to hang out with and we can get things done. But reality is we need to step aside and get some of these other people that are not like us, even though it's a little tougher, because they have crowds and they have audiences that are totally different than ours, and that are totally out there that we can bring into our world and make us a better, well-rounded person. So when I started learning this, there was so many things I was making a mistake on in a visual content. When I was doing my math, I wasn't seeing it up on a chalkboard. I wasn't looking at those numbers. Even though the teachers that are teaching math, generally speaking, are all visuals, that's why I was struggling. I wasn't a visual. I'm an auditory kinesthetics, my dominance, so I was trying to learn in an auditory state, not in a visual state on these subjects. So when you're learning how to read, you're learning spelling, you're learning mathematics, those are all visual subjects. And if you're not a visual, you need to learn how to put yourself in a visual state so that you can learn better. Because that's what Einstein, that's what these guys are. I mean, they see these things and are able to calculate better. Once I learned that, I was able to change so many things in my life for the better. I used to read something and all of a sudden my mind was just gone. And I know you're saying the same thing. Oh my gosh, I read something and I'm on this tangent. Well, you don't have to be. If you'll break your state into your auditory state, bring your eyes into a visual state, and you'll actually read in that state, and you will not let that plane break, your mind will not wander. So I challenge you to go try that if you're an auditory. If you're already a visual, you already know that, no big deal. But if you're an auditory or you're kinesthetic, this might help you a ton in retaining information as you read it. Mathematically, if you start to see things on a board, start to watch them, keep that plane up there, and add those things up, makes a huge difference. So if you have a young child that's got learning problems, this is really important for you to do. And right now with computers being up there, it is helping a ton because kids are sitting down now and they're having to look up to be able to see those monitors. Where it used to be in school, they'd have their book, they'd put it down, their head would go down, and they wouldn't be staying in a visual state. So a couple things to think about. Once again, this is just on the visual section that we're talking about. So the next section, we'll talk about auditories. I hope that was insightful for you. I want you to watch people though, see which side is their recall and which side is their creative side from a visual standpoint. Figure that out on yourself. And if you're not a visual as a dominant, then start to use some of these techniques to make a difference in your life.